China has shielded again the terrorist Masood Azhar just 60 minutes before the United Nations Security Council deadline. Using its veto power, China has blocked India's bid at the United Nations for the fourth time since 2009 to brand Masood an international terrorist. India today has accessed the United Nations Security Council note to all members, officially informing them about China's move. China is one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations, only in fact among the 5 permanent members against the ban. The remaining 4, United Kingdom, United States, France and Russia, had moved this proposal for the ban on Azhar. 8 other member states of the United Nations had co-sponsored this proposal.
For the 4th time in a row, India's attempt to have the United Nations Security Council ban Masood Azhar has been sabotaged by China. Pakistan's all-weather friend has once again put a technical hold on the attempt to designate Azhar a global terrorist. While India this time has secured the backing of several powerful countries, including the United States, United Kingdom and France, China's 11th hour veto has ensured that Azhar remains a free man.
India, and expectedly so, hit out at China for shielding Masood Azhar yet again. India strongly condemned China's move, claiming it has prevented action by the global community against terror. It further claimed it will continue its effort to ensure terrorists are brought to justice. India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Syed Akbaruddin, hit back at China, claiming it had given a signal against, it had not given a signal against terror at the United Nations. I want to divide this discussion in the next 40 minutes into 3 aspects. One, the motive behind China, once again, which prompted them to shield Masood Azhar. We'll also talk about what are India's options vis-a-vis Masood Azhar and Pakistan, and also how does this change India-China relations. Joining me to discuss this, Gaurav Sawant, Executive Editor, India Today, Geeta Mohan, our Foreign Affairs Editor, also with us. We also have G. Parthasarathy, for India's former envoy to Pakistan, an expert on India-China, India-Pakistan relations, Dr. B.R. Deepak. He's a professor of China Studies at JNU. He'll be joining us in a short while. Colonel Rohit Dev, defense analyst, also with us at this point of time. I want to start with you, Ambassador Parthasarathy. China, despite the international pressure, despite the United States, before in fact the United Nations deadline ended, giving a very clear signal that it is time for China to either stand against terror and with the world, or they will in fact be seen as somebody who is shielding terror. China, through all those pressures, the international pressure on Masood Azhar, and India standing along with the international community to ban Azhar to one side, and once again went ahead and they safeguarded Masood Azhar. What are China's consideration that they don't even care what the world thinks?
You know, let me slightly digress at the beginning. This resolution was unprecedented. Never has India enjoyed such support in the UN Security Council since independence. And I follow the UN. Secondly, I would also like to pay personal tribute to one of my old colleagues in Islamabad who lived with me through Kargil, through hijacking and all that, Syed Akbaruddin, now ambassador to the UN. Akbar deserves huge credit for keeping this flock of 14 out of the 15 countries backing the resolution.
Absolutely.
13 out of the 15 sponsoring the resolution. It's unprecedented. All 5 permanent members, all 4 out of 5 permanent members of the Security Council backed it. So anybody who says, oh, this is a fiasco, doesn't know what diplomacy is.
Okay.
Let them produce to me one instance in India's 70 odd years after independence where we've secured such international support at the UN.
All right.
In fact, on Kashmir and so on in the past, we used to fight shy. So now we're sitting pretty. With regard to the Chinese behavior, I am not surprised. You know, we tend to read the Chinese all wrong. China has, for China, Pakistan is an instrument for containment of India. Why don't we ever understand this? Pakistan is its cat's paw to keep India contained. And therefore, if that is the core of its policy,
Yes.
on such an occasion, whatever the opposition, it cannot let down Pakistan because it will lose credibility in our neighborhood. And it is fast lost out on getting its Indian friends in the neighborhood
Yes.
out in democratic elections. So this should be seen in the context of a sort of unprecedented victory in the United Nations Security Council
Okay.
on something China clearly desired. Pakistan to me is irrelevant.
Right.
Pakistan by itself is zero. It is China which is the support and anchor of Pakistan. So this is good, but we can't end here. There is a lot of need to follow up, and after the other speaker.
Absolutely. We'll talk about what are the options, of course, for India. Let me also bring in Dr. B.R. Deepak, who is a professor of China Studies at JNU. Dr. Deepak, sitting where you are, because you also follow India-China relations very closely, what are the positives from this, from China blocking United Nations? As Ambassador Parthasarathy initially said, that this is unprecedented move, the kind of support that India has been able to garner against Pakistan at the United Nations. But going forward, what do you believe as far as China is concerned? What are Chinese compulsion that, despite global pressure, still makes them only side with Pakistan?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Parthasarathy's point of view. Yes, unprecedented international support for Indian move. And secondly, as far as China's, exercising is sort of like, it's not even hidden veto, it's double standard, and especially indefensible in face of, the face of the terror, which China has been all along saying that, give us credible proofs, I think the proofs at this point in time and even before, so they were already there. But I think it is what G. Parthasarathy is saying, that, it is the larger calculus of China, which includes our Kashmir issue, which includes China-Pakistan Entente Cordiale, and the larger policy or the calculus of getting India entrenched in the subcontinent and not letting it come out of it. I think this is somewhat our policymakers need to put in our grand strategy, as how to deal these factors. One is, of course, Pakistan. We can deal it as we have done it, changing the you can say the erstwhile conventional thinking that we will not go in deep inside the Pakistan territory, which we have done this time. But I think more importantly is how to strategize, against this Chinese, and how to take Chinese grand strategy into our own, maybe the domestic calculation, domestic drivers, as well as, India's, our own policies are concerned, and also the larger, international paradigm.
Right.
I think as far as this this veto is concerned, it was obvious from the very beginning. If we see that, report, especially for the domestic consumption in China, in Chinese newspapers, if we go by them, that China was very clear that it would stand by Pakistan, because it was buying each and every argument which was emanating from Pakistan.
Let me get in Foreign Affairs Editor India Today, Geeta Mohan, at this point of time. Geeta, very strong response from India after, once again being backstabbed, though it's not a surprise as far as the experts here are concerned. India, in no uncertain words, has made their displeasure very clear, isn't it?
Well, yes, they have made their displeasure very clear, Ankit. But also look at the turnaround of the reaction that came our way from the Ministry of External Affairs. It almost seemed like India was prepared either way if China would have placed that block with a statement. So immediately after the hold was placed by China, there was a statement that came out from the Ministry of External Affairs, not just expressing displeasure but also thanking all those who supported. And in this, I have to say that just before the deadline ended, there were over a dozen countries that came out in support and co-sponsored that proposal. And despite that, we saw China placing the hold. China's entire strategy is very clear.
Yes.
They know what they need to do. They know why they are supporting Pakistan, and the whole argument of we kept saying this, throughout the day yesterday, Ankit, that if Masood Azhar is banned, then Pakistan will be cornered at the FATF. The same argument holds for China, that if Pakistan is cornered at the FATF, then economically it does not really bode well for China and Chinese investments in Pakistan.
And that also brings more international pressure on Pakistan as well. Gaurav, I want you to come in at this point of time. The amount of political capital or the diplomatic capital India spent on getting this sanction, which China vetoed once again, were we expecting too much? Because look at the case of Hafiz Saeed. Nothing actually changes on the ground when it comes to terrorists in Pakistan.
So India is following a multi-pronged strategy. One, move legally the right way, the way India has with Hafiz-Mohammed Saeed, Jamaat-ud-Dawa, Jaish-e-Mohammed, get the Financial Action Task Force to crack down on Pakistan. That's the legal way of going about it. But there's also a paradigm shift, and perhaps that is what India needs to do a little more, and that is use Indian Air Force, surgical strike, air strike, Navy, covert means, overt means, preemptive strikes to take out terrorists who target India, because the world is standing by India, and that is very clear. China will never stand by India. China will protect its national interests, as Ambassador Parthasarathi very rightly pointed out. China has China-Pakistan economic corridor. Remember, China is also ill-treating 1 million Muslims in their own country, and Pakistan is keeping quiet. So China does not want Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists to target China, not just in Pakistan, but also in the Xinjiang province. So that is where China is looking after its interests. There will be, as Rohit was telling us just a short right back, lakhs of Chinese who will be operating at Gwadar in Balochistan.
Yes.
So China is using terrorists to protect its interests. India should protect our interests by eliminating these terrorists.
Colonel Rohit Dev, I want you to come in on this at this point of time. For China, they have made it very clear that their interest largely lies in Pakistan. Business interests aside, strategically, Pakistan is a bigger asset for them than any friendship with India. How does that change the dynamics as far as India and China are concerned?
Ankit, I will just reiterate one point before I tell you something more. Diplomacy is an art, like I said. It's not a science. It's not 14:1 voting and all that. Our diplomatic channels have achieved much more. Since the 2016 resolution, when it was brought by China again and opposed, till now, you have reactions coming in, and my gut feeling is there is more in the offing in terms of the channels to operate. Whatever steps we take diplomatically should remain in the corridors of decision making. The economic intent should be made clear what we are doing. The other part is the internal politico-military intent. In that realm, the first thing we should start is, as a nation, as citizens, do not address a state like Pakistan with any courtesies. To begin with, a Hafiz Saeed is a terrorist Hafiz Saeed. If our vocabulary changes at all levels and awareness is there, including the political class, and less of bickering, it will improve.
Yes.
You have a chance, you had a chance, you still have a chance in the future. All the dossiers we have sent to Pakistan, tried to show to China, are in place. We don't have to show dossiers to our citizens. Citizens are more than convinced that Pakistan is a terrorist state or sponsors terrorism from its soil. So, to go the next step, even if it's symbolic currently, to call out Pakistan as a terrorist state will not be missing a point or a heave. It needs to be done. Let's see how the political class reacts. It is very easy. Kandahar you take off, then you start blaming everybody else now after so many years. Kandahar, my moot point was, why wasn't a citizen of this country, a pilot in that aircraft, not determined like me and you to not take off, irrespective of casualties? Have you ever seen an Israeli who would have taken off? No. So the threadbare part is that our own awareness, grooming, and that feeling of national fervor and the intent to be clear to citizens is the first moot point. Second is political bickering takes us nowhere. Hafiz Saeed is laughing. We are debating the number of people killed.
It has
UNSC is blocked by China. We are trying to blame our diplomacy and governance, not realizing what efforts would have gone. The very fact Gita said, that the script of the MA was read out immediately after the invasion. That means MA either had two scripts or MA had a forewarning and its senses were right to appreciate that China will not give in like this. And are we looking at China?
Okay.
No. For military action, China is inconsequential.
Let me get in Major General G.G. Dwivedi as well at this point of time. General Dwivedi, what I want to understand from you, China makes no bones about using its economic clout, its military clout when it comes to its own strategic aspects, achieving their own strategic goals. For India, is it time not to look at the global powers, but to go ahead with a national resolve on how they want to deal with terror, especially emanating from Pakistan?
Well, Ankit, I think you have raised a very important issue. Firstly, let me share with you, if India thought that China is going to do U-turn, I think we are not right in our perception. Because about China, having been a defense attaché for 3 years there, I like to make 2-3 very subtle observations. Firstly, China always pursues its own national interest and never bothered as to what neighbors or world thinks about it. I think at present, the Chinese interests are very centric to have Masood Azhar not listed as a terrorist. And there are a number of reasons I can give it to you. For China, periphery has been always very important. And, Xinjiang is a restive province, and Chinese have taken pains to ensure that there is no trouble in Xinjiang. They have set the house in order with Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And here, Masood Azhar has a great role to play because Chinese feel that they can take care of Xinjiang by having people like Masood Azhar on board.
Okay.
Because Masood Azhar has linkages with number of organizations, terrorist organizations in Afghanistan, Pakistan.
That's right.
And with the China, Pakistan economic corridor, there will be 500,000 Chinese living in Gwadar.
Okay.
So their security is very important. Second point, what I want to tell you, diplomacy works only if you can exert, pressure from the other corners. But this diplomacy, despite a huge effort, hasn't worked because we are not able to exert that kind of pressure on China.
Okay.
So therefore, I feel that China is not going to change their stance until adequate pressure is brought.
We will have to possibly change the way we deal with China rather than expecting anything in return from the Chinese. Very quickly, before we go and understand what are now the options for India, let's just take a very quick look at how the entire global community has reacted to China shielding Masood Azhar. The United States has slammed China for shielding Masood Azhar at the United Nations. The United States said that China's move to hold the listing is inconsistent with its own stated goals of combating terrorism. It further stated if China was serious about its goals, it would not protect terrorists. The United States also warned China if it continues to block Masood's proposal, then responsible member states may be forced to pursue other actions at the Security Council. Despite global pressure, Pakistan to act against Masood Azhar, China has given them a lifeline. Ambassador Parthasarathy, the relationship between India and China have largely been in the last 70 years during successive governments been very unbalanced one, where we in a hope have given them a lot of discounts, hoping that someday they will reciprocate. China, it doesn't seem is interested in or possibly in giving into India's aspects when it comes to India's global position as far as Pakistan emanated terror is concerned. Isn't it time to change that balance when it comes to China as well, sir?
Well, I think I discussed this last evening. The Chinese have a term called comprehensive national power. That means the country's power is determined by its determination, by its GDP, and by its military strength. And of course, the economy, when I said GDP. They measure everything in those terms. And they look at India and they say we are 1/6 of them in those terms, particularly in the economic side. Militarily, the way we have messed up our defense production and defense acquisitions, the Chinese are way ahead. Let's be very, very real. But they can't take us for granted, and we can take them on our borders. Their aim is to ring us around with earlier in the Indian Ocean was called a string of pearls, and with strategic containment, meaning in India's Indian Ocean neighborhood, get governments which are have animosity to India. There are several ways of dealing with it. One is balance of power. People who are similarly placed, and I can think of two immediately in Asia, or three: Japan, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And the other is by your own strength and other relationships. Finally, and this is crucial, you need the covert capabilities to counter their political moves, particularly in Pakistan. I am afraid over a period of time there has been no consistent policy on that. For example, we succeeded in Maldives, we've succeeded in Sri Lanka in getting what we want. Therefore, let's be very clear, we need to mobilize our allies, and we need to have, by all means, deal with China. If you benefit from an investment in a high-tech area, take it. Don't. That's how they grew with what they got from America.
Yes.
But squeeze them where you can. And I'll tell you, we discussed this last night also. A crucial area. Vietnam is to China what Pakistan is to us. For 20 years, the Vietnamese have been asking us BrahMos missiles. The producers of BrahMos are ready to give it. South Bloc lacks the stomach and the will to do that. They forget, to them they will do anything to justify building China's navy or Pakistan's navy,
yes,
giving them nuclear weapons designs, giving them missiles to hit Andaman and Nicobar Islands. But yet, as long as you have a set of old grandmothers running foreign policy, running scared of China, we are going to be stuck where we are.
Okay.
We need to certainly cooperate with them where we can, derive the maximum benefit we can. There's no need to have tensions with them on the border.
Okay.
But we have to answer their contempt, including Taiwan. There's no economic relations which you can have.
That's right.
So we are passive, and we still suffer from a 1962 syndrome.
Okay. Professor Deepak, I also want you to come in on this. What can India leverage to put pressure on China diplomatically? When people keep throwing these billions of dollars, the trade between India and China, at the current context, it is at least 3 times more than what China and Pakistan would expect after the CPEC, that entire corridor is constructed. It will be 3 times more at the peak of what China is going to get. Despite that, have we not been able to leverage the right kind of quid pro quo with China when it comes to getting some sort of discounts on them on the global forum?
I think one thing is, the relationship between India and China is very, very asymmetrical, whether it is defense, whether it is the economy, or even, our geopolitical clout, I think we have to admit that, But I think one thing we need to, maybe take a cue from China, how to, make enemies neutral powers, and how to make neutrals into friends, and how to make friends into pivot. That is Chinese master stroke, and they have done it right through the history. And one thing we really need to, ascertain that what China does, it does because of its national interest, its core interest, and it is very, very transactional country, and it doesn't give any damn to, United Nations or maybe even the big powers, Forget about now when it has emerged as a challenger, to the established hegemon. Even during the time of poverty, you see the Korean Wars, it, made a decision to fight US, So I think what India at this point in time need to learn is to be transactional, with China, as far as our national interests are concerned, as far as Chinese investment in hard infrastructure is concerned, I think we need to entrench them inside India. I think that is the only way at this point in time, so maybe we can exercise some leverage. Otherwise, the kind of overcapacity China has, and they are dumping into our markets, not
Yes.
only here in India but also all over the globe. through this, the project of the century, the Belt and Road. So I think it is going to be extremely difficult for us to have any leverage. You
Yes.
see the skewed trade volume between India and China. So it has touched almost $100 billion at this point in time.
Okay.
But you see the the trade deficit which is there. So it is huge, and we really don't have any leverage, and maybe the kind of Chinese investment
Okay.
is taking place in India.
Right.
So it is again where I think they should not be having there, but the places where they should be. But I think maybe we are.
Okay,
we are
Geeta,
giving it a cold
Geeta,
shoulder.
I want you to come in on this. Possibly the crux of the matter is from Panchsheel to the Wuhan spirit and also now to the Jhula diplomacy. All that has to change. While the United States says that China will possibly have to bear some consequences, the world have to say on what steps can they take next, because China is the only one shielding Azhar Masood. What are the options? How can we harness the global superpowers once again, not only in United Nations but across the globe, to put more pressure to isolate China and Pakistan partnership further?
Well, Ankit, one has to, and India certainly has to recalibrate its own decisions and strategies when it comes to how it views its diplomatic ties with the Chinese and with the Americans. The bigger play over here is the rivalry between between the United States of America and China, and in that, yes, China has taken a position given the geostrategic positioning of Pakistan, and Pakistan being an all-weather friend. Look at our own decisions of the past couple of years, distancing ourselves from the Dalai Lama, being highly sensitive towards Chinese sensitivities when it comes to the Tibetan cause here in India, not allowing them space and keeping far away from them. Might have worked for China, and we might have allowed China the space, but in return, China certainly has not looked into our concerns. So yes, like many experts on the panel have been saying, that India has to start looking at whether if we should start looking at China's One China policy, and the fact that China has shown no respect to India's territorial integrity. They've gone ahead with their projects in POK despite all the protestations by India.
Yes.
And moreover, look at the bigger picture of how China is talking about taking sides. Over here, India is doing business with America and with China. China has to realize the real importance of keeping trade away from fighting terrorism. In this, China makes no differentiation and distinction.
The transaction, the quid pro quo between India and China has to be as equals, not as unequal countries, as China possibly hoping to take more, in fact, space as far as the geopolitical situation across the globe is concerned. General Dwivedi, very quickly, he has raised his hand. He wants to come in. Sir, a quick comment from you before we move on to the other aspect of how India should now possibly be thinking very independent and how things have changed vis-a-vis Pakistan. You wanted to make a quick point vis-a-vis India and China changing relations as well, sir. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I think time has come. We need to have a relook at a complete spectrum. But before that, I think we need to understand what is Chinese strategic calculus. Chinese strategic calculus has three very important parameters. First and foremost, Chinese respect strength, that is Li, and they only deal with equals, and they don't think that India is worthy of dealing as an equal. Second point, the Chinese have a very deep sense of history, and they want to emerge as a superpower and gain their rightful place in the polity. In that context, they want to keep India marginalized, and that is the second point. And third is they have a policy of posturing. China has postured so well vis-a-vis India, we are almost surrounded, and they have fixed us against Pakistan. So these are the three very important factors before we actually relook at our policy. And I would say our policy must be on two very basic parameters. Firstly, engage China, but yet rebalance and close the gap. Because the way we stand today, until we rebalance into Indo-Pacific, until we go in for a quad type of arrangement, until we engage with ASEAN countries, we have no scope to actually level off with China. So therefore, policy of appeasement must give way to policy of realism and not idealism.
Okay. Even as the global pressure mounts on Pakistan to act against Masood Azhar, the Jaish chief continues to operate freely in Pakistan. Masood has released a fresh audio tape saying banning any outfit won't work. And his jihad in Kashmir will continue. He also hails Pulwama suicide bomber Adil Ahmed Dar. Masood Azhar claims he is not ill and is doing fine. This is in contradiction with what Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said when he went on to say Masood Azhar is extremely unwell.
चंद मशहूर अफराद को मार देने या चंद तंजीमों का गला दबा देने से ये आग रुकेगी नहीं। तहरीक जब जड़ पकड़ ले तो वो खुद अपनी खिदमत के लिए अफराद उठाती है, तंजीमें बनाती है। अफ़गान जिहाद पहले खड़ा हुआ, तंजीमें बाद में बनी। तहरीक कश्मीर पहले उठी, तंजीमें बाद में बनी। अहले मोहब्बत से गुजारिश, इस वक्त दुआ और तवज्जो इल्लाह की सख्त ज़रूरत है, अपने लिए भी और उम्मत मुस्लिमा के लिए भी। एक तरफ कश्मीर की मुबारक तहरीक है, एक कश्मीरी नौजवान आदिल अहमद डार शहीद ने बड़ी कुर्बानी देकर मसला कश्मीर को बहुत आगे तक पहुंचा दिया है। बस अब तो थोड़ी सी मज़ीद मेहनत दरकार है, मगर बुरा हो बुज़दिली और दुनिया परस्ती का अब जिहाद कश्मीर के ख़िलाफ़ साजिशें उरूज पर हैं। अल्लाह ताला से उम्मीद है कि शुहदाए किराम की कुर्बानी रंग लाएगी। यहाँ एक बात यह बताना ज़रूरी है कि कश्मीर की तहरीक अगर कश्मीर में न चली तो ये इर्द गिर्द फैल जाएगी। ये फितरत का उसूल है, धमकी नहीं। बरे सग़ीर के अमन और तरक्की के लिए अगर कोई मुखलिस है तो उसे पहले मसला कश्मीर हल करना होगा, वरना ये आग फैलेगी और इसे फैलने से कोई नहीं रोक सकेगा। मुझ नाचीज़ गरीब के बारे में तवातुर से ख़बरें आ रही हैं कि मैं सख्त बीमार हूँ, कोई गुर्दे का मर्ज़ बता रहा है तो कोई जिगर का। मुमकिन है दुनिया भर में 2-4 अफराद जो मुझसे अल्लाह ताला के लिए मोहब्बत रखते हों इन ख़बरों से परेशान हों। इसलिए अर्ज़ करता हूँ कि अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह सुम्मा अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह मैं खैरियत से हूँ, गुर्दे भी ठीक हैं और जिगर भी। बाकी जहाँ तक दिल का ताल्लुक़ है तो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह वो भी तिब्बी लिहाज से ठीक है।
Gaurav Sawant, while Masood Azhar claims that everything is okay with him, isn't it time for India to give Pakistan a headache that they will not forget? I mean, or at least as far as Masood Azhar is concerned, there has been a paradigm shift, and very importantly, when India went across the LOC, attacked the terror camps in Pakistan, very conveniently, China at that point was silent. China did not say anything either against India or for Pakistan. We should be leveraging that further.
So, Ankit, China did talk about violation of sovereignty, and that is where China does stand with Pakistan, but China also knows it can do precious little beyond that. That's point one. Point two, India needs to now seriously move beyond symbolism. Forget Jhula diplomacy, forget Wuhan spirit, look at hard measures that need to be taken. One surgical strike in POK will not work. One big airstrike in Balakot, it sends out a strong message, but just one surgical strike is not enough to deal with the state sponsor of terror, Pakistan, because it also has the support of a very powerful country like China. So India needs to relentlessly outthink China, outthink Pakistan, and keep hurting Pakistan. The more destabilized Pakistan is, I'm not saying split Pakistan into multiple pieces, but India needs to ensure Pakistan remains in jelly state, because that also hurts China, because China-Pakistan economic corridor will not move forward, will not be productive, will not bring returns as long as Pakistan remains in jelly state.
Okay, Colonel Dev, very quickly, by going across the LOC and attacking the Jaish-e-Mohammed terror camps, India at least exposed Pakistan's nuclear bogey. If we continue with a military offensive as far as the terror infrastructure in Pakistan is concerned, do you believe there is a real threat of a 2.5 front war that people keep talking about when it comes to India, Pakistan and China?
None of the sort, Ankit. I've been on record saying that earlier. The narrow approach and the self-driven diplomacy of China actually is in our favor. The denial is okay, he has to take a stand to prove to people and things like that. Notwithstanding, if we squeeze the economic tap on Pakistan, which is happening, the military is not getting the adequate funds they require. With the economic investment of China and the military tussle which Pakistan wants to create both on our side, towards Baloch side and wherever it's doing, the cost of funding the terror of China must be enhanced suitably. So one fine day that cost has to be exorbitant for China to continue. That's one. Second is, how do we bleed? We don't have to do surgical strike. He'll give you an opportunity. I'm telling you, March, April, you will get some more opportunities. It will happen. But as far as we are concerned, the LC is an active sector. And with an economy which is more mightier than Pakistan, my personal feeling is that if you reply to them by firing 5 rounds, you ensure they fire 50 rounds. slowly they will drain out their arsenal. Moment you know scramble 2 jets anywhere in Batinda, even Bhopal these days, probably you know Air India, they see on a radar, they start mobilizing and start having blackouts. So you're draining them. Their economic will to sustain a war, some journalists said six days in some foreign media, has already probably come down to 4 or 3. So start draining him. So while you are draining, ensure nothing more comes in. So key components of the military, key weapon systems and arsenal and ammunition should not come in.
Okay.
Money should not come in.
Okay.
And start draining. So if we are, we have a lot of ammunition lying, which we keep doing in that condemnation boards, they go ori, start fighting them.
Yes.
So that is good enough for a small nation like Pakistan, a weak nation like Pakistan. And China has to be more of a diplomatic endeavor without any chest beating.
Okay.
Because currently, as the former ambassador said, we are not there. You need to have a measured response. So first get there and then talk in your terms first. Don't have to chest beat and do something funny.
Yes,
not
Ambassador,
China is not going to interrupt us.
Okay, Ambassador Parthasarathy, what do you see as the long-term and the short-term measures when it comes to dealing with China at this point of time? Given the condition that we are in, they have made their stand amply clear more than once. We talk about the paradigm shift and the way we need to turn up the heat when it comes to China as well. What are the short-term and the long-term measures that any government, the government which is going to take over after the elections as well, should pursue?
You see, firstly, you should have not give China any space for internationally publicizing itself. I mean, you see this ridiculous nonsense of our cricket team going with to the World Cup wearing shirts with the Chinese advertisement. This sort of nonsense and childishness should stop. Secondly, I think the important point is you will have to develop counterbalances. Look, we are doing pretty well in our western neighborhood now. We enjoy good relations with everybody. ASEAN and the East, we're doing well. I think you should look at China's vulnerabilities. Its own internal structure, mobilize Muslim populations across the world that their own countries, with the exception of Turkey, are watching as China really insults, humiliates and reduces their the Muslims there to virtually being creatures.
Yes.
Something even our leftist friends here should learn about them. Yes. So, and who keep talking a lot about secularism and praising China at the same time. The other point is, I must say this, we have run down our defenses over the last 20 years. Our armed forces are fighting with outdated weapons. Who uses a MiG-21? And you expect our pilots to deal with this? The automatic rifles the ordinary soldier has is third rate compared to what others carry. We have run down our defenses, successive governments, over the last 20 years. That needs to be corrected, otherwise we are hollow. You know,
Okay.
For the acquisition of one aircraft,
Yes.
to bring us back to 42 squadrons, the proposal was initiated by the Air Force in the year 2000.
Right.
It is 2019, not one aircraft has arrived. Defense spending is the lowest in our history, 1.4% of GDP. I mean, where can you have these pretensions of being a great power which will wield influence when your soldiers are not properly equipped and your Air Force is flying 40-year-old fighter planes?
Yes. Okay, I very quickly want to just get concluding comments from my other guests as well. Very quickly, let me start with you, General Dwivedi. As far as China is concerned, the only language they understand when it comes to dealing with any country is only when they believe that that's a threat, both militarily and economically. How can India harness that going further from the point where we are at? This has to be the point where our policy against China, not only as a government, but as a nation as a whole, changes.
I think first and foremost, we must make it very clear to China that we are going to deal with them on equal terms and not as a subservient neighbor. That should be the one-line statement to China, and we should work for it. Secondly, the Chinese have tremendous vulnerabilities. They are the lonely power. Except Pakistan and North Korea, they have no friends. We must exploit our goodwill around the globe and ensure that China remains in isolation. And third, very important thing, we need to build our capacity to make a statement that we are there to challenge China and emerge as an important player in Indo-Pacific region and never let this opportunity go. That's how we can rebalance China, and that's how China will actually deal with us on better and more respectable terms.
Okay, I've run completely out of time on this. The fact remains, ladies and gentlemen, as all our guests and experts have been saying, there has to be a recalibration on how we deal with China, how we position ourselves, not only in the region, but also globally. That message has to be sent very loud and clear. It's not about, useless bravado or false bravado about we'll take them on the border. We can take both these countries on. At this point of time, for India, it's about building capacity and also about changing the narrative and the mindset, the resolve. The resolve has to change not only vis-a-vis Pakistan, but as a nation, a complete nation with the government, opposition and the country, the citizens coming together when it comes to China as well. Thank you so much to all my guests for this enlightening discussion this morning.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you will love to.